I'm Camilla, and I share my home with my husband James and our chatty 6-year-old daughter. I'm a 27-year-old mom who works. We see ourselves as a regular, close family, neither rich nor poor. Recently, we encountered a difficulty when a storm named Sophia came our way. Sophia is my mother-in-law, living alone since her husband Henry passed away. At first, when James, our daughter, and I got married, we chose not to live with her. But over time, it became clear she was having a tough time on her own. After 4 years of being married, she was getting older, and living alone became harder and riskier for her. It was a difficult choice, but I decided to have her come live with us. James, being her only son, was born late in her marriage. Talking to James about it was challenging because he didn't want to add more responsibilities for me. But I understood the importance of us supporting his mother together. I gathered my courage and let him know about my decision, admitting that I couldn't manage everything alone with our daughter and work. At first, James and I were both surprised and unsure. To be honest, I had my own doubts too. Still, we both agreed that it was the right thing to do. I told James that if anything happened to Sophia, he would be the main person responsible for taking care of her. After talking it over thoroughly, we decided to bring her into our home. I let James know that I valued his support in making this choice, recognizing the difficulties we might encounter. It was a significant move, but we were aware it was needed for the overall well-being of our family. On a spring day, surrounded by the joyful flutter of cherry blossoms, she tearfully thanked me. Seeing her humble and grateful, I thought we would have a happy life together. At first, she continued to be modest, but as time went on, her real character started to show. To my disappointment, she began treating me poorly, and I realized I had made a mistake in my judgment. Regrettably, the flavor of something was overpowering for my taste buds, and I requested if it could be toned down a bit. Instead of accommodating my request, she responded critically, saying, "Why did you make it so bland? Are you trying to mock me?" This marked the commencement of her unkind actions. Soon after, she revealed that my clothes couldn't be tossed into the washing machine. They needed to be delicately hand-washed to prevent any supposed damage. Even though I recommended dry cleaning to preserve the good quality of the clothes, she brushed it off, deeming it an unnecessary expense. Relying on my son's income, she stressed the significance of frugality and saving money. The situation would have been easier to handle if she took responsibility for the expenses, but it appeared she was unaware of such considerations. I felt convinced that she was intentionally bothering me, judging by the constant smirk on her face. This was only the start, like the beginner stage of an unpleasant game. Progressing to the intermediate level, she began critiquing my makeup choices, implying that it didn't improve my appearance much. In her opinion, my granddaughter was lucky to have inherited her son's good looks, which mirrored hers and promised a bright future. To my amazement, she would rise at 4 in the morning, devoting more than 2 hours to applying makeup. After her shower, she emerged looking like an entirely different person. Though I respected her wish to look beautiful, I couldn't help but notice that her foundation was notably lighter than her natural skin tone, giving her a resemblance to a geisha with oddly red cheeks. Even though dealing with the challenging task of cleaning her bright red lipstick stains off cups, I chose to withhold my criticism about her appearance and kept my thoughts to myself. However, what I found truly unforgivable was her nonchalant disposal of my cherished makeup set. When I returned from work, it had disappeared, and when I confronted her about it, she showed no remorse for throwing it away. I've mentioned it before, haven't I? Makeup doesn't really enhance your face much. Avoid spending money on unnecessary things. It's practical to skip makeup from now on. Notice how thoughtful I am for our family? You should recognize and appreciate that. I never thought I would find myself in this situation. If I were in the mountains, I might have screamed out my frustration. The term never echoed in her ears repeatedly, but regrettably, I wasn't in the mountains where I could let out my frustration. What heightened the frustration was that she only treated me poorly when we were alone, strategically choosing times when James was at work and our daughter was at preschool. I hesitated to discuss my concerns with James regarding his mother, but I felt it necessary for him to be aware. After much inner deliberation, I cautiously conveyed my dissatisfaction, yet it seemed to have little effect. Eventually, I decided to address the issue directly with her. When James confronted her with a warning, she tearfully denied everything. She took it to the extreme by accusing me of attempting to set her up. James found himself in a state of confusion, not knowing how to navigate the situation. In response, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Faced with her denial of any wrongdoing, I knew I had to take matters into my own hands. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I decided to discreetly document our interactions, capturing them on record to show James. While pondering where to discreetly place a camera, the advanced stage of mistreatment unfolded. It all commenced with a sprained ankle when she first moved in. As the seasons transitioned from a scorching summer to the waning days of autumn, a winter day arrived, with James away on a business trip and my daughter staying with my parents. During this period, the mistreatment reached new heights. The landscape outside was blanketed in snow, and ordinarily I would drive to work. However, with chains on my tires, I decided to take a taxi that day. After finishing my workday, I adhered to my routine, cleaning the house, doing laundry, and preparing dinner. It's crucial to note that it was the heart of winter, and during the night, the snow accumulated outside. Undoubtedly, it was not the most opportune time for hand-washing clothes. Despite the challenging circumstances, Sophia handed me a stack of her laundry with a stern directive. "Here's my laundry. These are expensive clothes, so you must wash them by hand," she declared, emphasizing the word must, well aware that I wouldn't be thrilled. Attempting to find a middle ground, I proposed washing them in warm water, but she opposed, cautioning about potential fading collars and fabric damage. My frustration peaked as I felt my patience waning, thinking, "It's snowing outside. Are you kidding me? Why should I use cold water on this freezing night? If you care so much, do it yourself." In the end, I couldn't contain my frustration any longer and raised my voice at her. "How dare you? I'm elderly. Are you seriously suggesting I wash these in cold water myself?" Her indignant response resounded through the room. "I need to be sure you're not joking." "I'm serious all the time," she blushed, surprised by my response. I stood my ground. "Why not step outside and see for yourself? You've been cozy indoors, unaware, haven't you? It's snowing heavily and it's extremely cold out there." I protested, "I'm not going out in this freezing weather." "You're so mean. What's with you? You tell me to use cold water in this chilly weather?" We argued back and forth, and I was determined to stick to my beliefs. I felt sorry for James, but I couldn't be a good wife if I continued to live under her rules. She grimaced at me, suddenly grabbing my hand tightly and pulling me along. I was surprised by her strength, questioning her actual age. Before I knew it, I found myself being ushered out through the front door. When I realized what was going on, the door locked behind me with Sophia on the other side. "I don't need a daughter-in-law like you. Just go. This is my house. You're the one who should leave." My cries fell on deaf ears as she resolutely locked me out, indifferent to my desperate pounding on the door. Distraught and unsure of my next move, clad only in a coat and without my child fortunately with me, I found solace in the presence of my phone snug in my pocket. Dialing Sophia's number, I anxiously listened to it ring, but she remained silent on the other end. Attempting to reach James, who was expected back that night, proved futile as he did not answer. Left with no alternative, I resorted to sending him a text message. "Your mom has locked me out of the house. I'm at risk of hypothermia in the snow. I'll be waiting for you at a nearby diner." I strolled through the snow, contemplating whether to dial 911. I hesitated, not wanting to create a scene, anticipating Sophia's attempts to talk me out of it. Choosing to wait at a diner felt like a more reasonable option. Embracing my shivering frame, my breath created a misty aura, and the snow persisted in its steady descent, building up on the ground. In the serene darkness, devoid of passing cars or bikes, I trudged onward. Upon arriving at the diner, what I saw was beyond belief. Due to the snowstorm, the evacuation spot I urgently sought was closed. The night was proving to be quite a challenge. Faced with the closure, I decided to head to the police station instead of opting for a call-and-wait approach, trudging forward with a prevailing sense of despair. The weight of the snow had left my fingers and toes numb. Glancing at my phone, I realized an hour had elapsed since I was locked out. Another attempt to reach Sophia proved futile as she remained unresponsive. Moving briskly through the transformed landscape, my steps halted as I thought I heard something. Halting at the onset of a bridge spanning a river, I strained to listen closely. A distinct cry for help reached my ears. Hastening towards the sound, I peered down from the moderately elevated bridge and spotted an elderly woman stranded in a shallow section of the river, desperately calling out. Without a moment's hesitation, I descended the bank and entered the river. The frigid water cut through my feet and legs, transforming cold into a biting pain. Undeterred, I persevered in my determined approach towards her. "Are you okay?" "Hello? I can't move. I'm so cold." Are you all right? Stay with me. Grateful for assistance, she leaned against me and, overcome by the ordeal, lost consciousness. I found myself in a state of panic, my feet and legs rendered frozen and unresponsive. Someone please help us, I cried out in desperation. Just when I feared my pleas were falling on deaf ears, a man's voice reached me. Oh my God, are you okay? To my immense relief, it was James who appeared, sprinting towards me in a state of urgency. The moment my eyes met his, I succumbed to unconsciousness. As I gradually opened my eyes, the sterile surroundings of a hospital room came into focus. James leaned over me with a worried expression, ready to recount the recent events. Following the daring rescue of both the elderly lady and me from the river, James promptly dialed 911. It turned out that I had been in a deep slumber since the previous night, oblivious to James's scheduled business trip. He shared, "You know, when you called me, I was still on the plane. I tried reaching you as soon as I landed, but you didn't answer. I faced a lengthy wait for a taxi, so I opted for a train and was on my way back when I saw you heading into the river. What a stroke of luck." In a panic, he had feared that I might be intentionally plunging into the river. James disclosed that the elderly woman had been grappling with depression and had attempted suicide. Upon hitting the icy water, she snapped out of her despair, desperately trying to escape. Regrettably, her body was immobilized by the cold, rendering her unable to move. Had she not been discovered when she was, the outcome could have been tragic. Experiencing a blend of relief and unease, James encouraged me to take a much-needed rest. "Sleep, you must be exhausted. Get some good rest." His kind words and the warmth of the hospital room reassured me, and I slowly drifted off to sleep. Overcome with anger towards Sophia, I spent a few days hospitalized, regaining my energy. When I returned home, I found myself frozen in front of it, Sophia. She never once showed her face while I was in the hospital and, of course, never apologized. She locked me out in the heavy snow, nearly endangering my life. I couldn't honestly live with her anymore. With a heavy heart, I opened the front door, expecting to face Sophia eventually. As soon as I stepped inside, I was taken aback by the sight of her. Sophia, unexpectedly, was standing there. "I'm very sorry, Camilla," she apologized, and I froze in surprise at the sound of her voice. "Pardon me." I couldn't believe she was apologizing. Unable to say anything, I looked at her with suspicious eyes. "I didn't imagine you would end up like that. I sincerely regret that I lost my temper and kicked you out. Please forgive me," she continued, her voice choked with tears. While part of me questioned the sincerity of her regret, considering her past condescending behavior, I remained skeptical. It seemed too crazy to believe there was no ulterior motive. I stared at her with suspicious eyes and asked, "What would you do if I said I can't forgive you?" Sophia jerked a little, and I sensed a hint of nervousness in her reaction. Who deceived? Who could predict the consequences of being locked out in such intense snowfall? If you profess ignorance, does that imply a lack of sanity? As I injected a touch of sarcasm, her face flushed crimson. "What's that you said?" she shouted vehemently. "Merely because I offered an apology, you attempted to exploit the situation. How dare you?" James threatened to end our living arrangement unless I apologized to you, leaving me with no alternative but to comply. Do you grasp the situation? I followed his directive, so it's concluded now. If you comprehend, proceed with your tasks. She readily fell for my subtle bait, revealing her true motives. As anticipated, remorse was absent. People might transform overnight, but individuals like her seem resistant to lasting change. In an attempt to distress me, she promptly initiated a campaign of bullying. Insisting, she declared, "You must launder my clothes in cold water." She persisted in expecting me to fulfill that task. "Prepare only my preferred dishes. If it's not up to par, I'll address it." Oh dear, there seemed to be no redemption for her. Audibly sighing, I turned my face to conceal my exasperation. "Sweetheart, what's the next move?" James stood a few steps away, discreetly out of Sophia's line of sight. My husband, and Sophia's cherished son, had been present since the outset. "What about your job, James?" Sophia demanded, standing alongside him. I decided to take a day off to be with Camilla. "Honestly, you're not genuinely sorry, are you?" "Oh, no, it was just a jest, obviously." Even if it wasn't amusing in the slightest. Remember what I said? Feel sincere regret for your actions, apologize to her, and ensure you never repeat anything like that. I did say sorry, right? You quickly recovered and were mean, causing her more pain. I made it clear it was a joke, albeit a terrible one. I had instructed James to give me some space for a while. Sophia's response played out just as I anticipated, or rather, even more spectacularly. I couldn't contain my laughter at her desperate attempts to justify herself. "What's so amusing, Camilla? You're aware that you're— Hey Mom, I'm addressing you at this moment. Pay attention to me." I apologize. It appeared that she couldn't avoid the reprimand from her beloved son. He continued, reproaching her while she listened tearfully. "How could you treat Camilla so harshly? She cared about you and agreed to include you with us. I might have been a bit forward earlier, but I never mistreated her." She persisted in trying to deny it. "Well, I did offer feedback on her cooking a few times, but I simply wanted her to understand my preferences. I suggested sending my clothes to the dry cleaner, but she insisted it was a waste of money and preferred to wash them herself. Even when I recommended wearing makeup, she ignored me and even discarded cosmetics right in front of me." At times, I questioned whether she was employing sarcasm. What was her point? It seemed like she was avoiding taking any responsibility for her actions. Left with no alternative, I retrieved my phone and replayed the recording. "These clothes are costly, so you have to hand wash them," resonated her distinct voice from the recording. She yelled and attempted to snatch my phone, but I skillfully evaded her grasp and persisted with the playback. "You need to wash in cold water. I don't want a daughter-in-law like you. Go away." The echoes of her forcibly removing me, sealing the front door, and dismissing my pleas. All the mistreatment she uttered and committed that day was captured. I had my phone in my pocket, recording the entire episode. Every time I engaged in a conversation with her, I made sure to activate the recording feature on my phone, determined to gather evidence of her statements and actions no matter what. My consistent efforts must have yielded positive outcomes. If I hadn't had my phone with me that day, things might have unfolded differently. "Do you want to say anything?" I inquired. Sophia was visibly upset. "Do you have any final remarks?" "Final remarks?" I queried. "Yes, what does that mean?" "This is the conclusion. You exploited my kindness in caring for you. I want you out of the house. I am severing ties with you. Go ahead, live independently, and never reach out to me again. I will disregard any attempts at contact and cut all ties with you. I won't be seeing you again. You still have the funds from the sale of your house. If you have a pension in addition, you can lead a comfortable life without relying on my support." "Wait a moment, James. Pause for a second. Are you evicting me? Are you betraying your sole parent? You're betraying me." His anger rendered her speechless, causing her shoulders to slump. The melting snow from the roof echoed louder in the profound silence, and then everything unfolded rapidly. James and I gathered our belongings while she sat despondent, doing nothing. Her new residence, located 2 hours away by car, was in her hometown. She had some relatives there, but it seemed like a disconnected situation up until now. I figured that even if she returned, no one would pay much attention. It appeared she had no friends since she never ventured outside when she was with us. I presumed she had ample time on her hands, which she occupied by tormenting me. However, that was no longer a concern for me. "Goodbye, Grandma." My daughter waved goodbye to Sophia. It wasn't until she saw her beloved granddaughter that Sophia began to cry. She wasn't sad to see her go. Instead, she smiled as a taxi carried her away, leaving Sophia behind. It didn't stir any emotions within me. I simply thought she had brought troubles upon herself and walked into the house with a renewed mindset. Days and months drifted away. Sophia was now dwelling in solitude. Occasionally, I received calls from her and I made sure she was doing okay. As declared before, we haven't met or talked to her. She will persist in living alone, feeling lonely. The price she paid for disrupting the happiness she had attained was significant. Since her departure, I have regained peace of mind. I find myself now offering tea to an unexpected visitor, a teacher, all while listening to the rhythmic hum of the washing machine. My visitor is an older woman, the very same lady I rescued on that snowy day. After spending some time living alone, she became pessimistic about her life and had many thoughts on her mind. However, feeling the icy river water sparked a desire to continue living a little longer. My son suggested I move in with his family. It's wonderful news. His wife is a genuinely kind person, but I don't want to become a burden. So I've made up my mind to relocate closer to them. Ah, I understand. My son lives quite a distance away and I rarely get to see him. I've been alone and feeling lonely ever since my husband passed away. I used to believe there was nothing good in leaving, but now I realize it doesn't have to be that way. I'm truly happy to hear that. As long as I'm breathing, I'll keep living. I am very grateful to you for rescuing me that day." We exchanged smiles. The elderly woman had endured a challenging, lengthy, and solitary life, but ultimately discovered happiness. Sophia willingly chose to end her living arrangement with her family. Retirement offers numerous possibilities, and everyone has their unique preferences. The way you approach it can determine whether it becomes a happy or unhappy phase of life. Observing the three elderly women, I start to envision what I desire for my own future. I reflect on how I should lead my life now to maintain its peace and happiness, ensuring a joyful retirement down the road.